Hey guys, and welcome back to another review, this time on Assetto Corsa. This game is now 6 years old, released in 2014, which feels like an absolute age ago. So in this video I've got a general review, although we're also going to be seeing how well or not well the game has aged, to see whether it's still worth your money in 2020. So let's get into it. So first up, let's take a look at the cars and tracks, and then we'll move on to the driving options. This game has a very wide range of cars, with everything from above 500s to modern Formula 1 cars. There are a total of 178 cars, although many of these are only available via extra DLC. All cars feel unique and accurate, and the amazing setup customization allows for a lot of fine tuning. Cars also have livery options to choose from, which is a nice feature. If you do want access to all of these cars though, you will need to be prepared to pay quite a bit extra. All modern F1 and LMP1 cars are part of DLCs, and to drive any Porsche except for 2 or 3 road cars, you will have to buy yet another DLC, which I think is a real shame. The track selection is also pretty good. There are all the tracks you would expect to see here, and there are multiple layouts for many of them. The tracks are all laser scanned, so they are accurate and they all look pretty good. All the tracks are available with the base game except for one, which is the Red Bull Ring, but overall the tracks and cars are adequate enough to make for a good gameplay experience, although as you can probably tell, the amount of DLC content is becoming quite prominent already. So what about the physics, graphics, force feedback, and the overall driving experience? Well, first up, physics. They're pretty much class leading at the game's release, and they still are very damn good. Of course, I've never driven a GT3 race car or a Lamborghini Huracan, but these cars and all the cars in the game just feel right. They respond well to driving inputs, which pairs together really well with the excellent force feedback this game has to offer. I use a Logitech G29 with my PS4, and it works incredibly well with this game, giving very good feel. My only grudge is that in some cars the wheel does not match one-to-one with what's on screen, although I think that could be forgiven. So the graphics then. For a 2014 game, it's, well, what you would expect. At the time, some people said it was by far the best looking racing game on console, but that was before GT Sport was released. The graphics are fine, there's nothing particularly wrong with them, and they don't hurt the experience too much. There's a lack of detail in textures though, and the reflections on cars are almost non-existent. Shadows moving over cars are also at a noticeably lower frame rate than the rest of the game, which runs on a PS4 Pro at a pretty solid 60. And the crowds, well, just don't look at them. The AI in this game has held up pretty well, while not quite as advanced as something like Assetto Corsa.
Competizione.
The experience is still pretty solid. There's ample difficulty customization, going from very easy to alien, and there's also an aggression setting, which is something I'd like to see in more racing games. The AI cars will defend and try to overtake you quite convincingly, which makes for a fun offline experience. Sound design is, however, quite questionable. It's quite hit and miss depending on the car, although the general trend is that cars sound alright from the inside and very odd from the chase view. Oh yes, the chase view. This game is obviously meant to be driven in cockpit mode, which is understandable as it is a sim, and there are all the FOV settings you could ever want for that. The chase view, however, is an absolute monstrosity. It feels like it's come straight from a Need for Speed game, and in fact I've played Need for Speed Heat and it's worse than that. There's no feel from the car, and it does that awful panning motion whenever the car turns, so good luck hitting any apexes. Overall, the driving experience is still pretty damn solid. The physics are very good, and they make up for the game's downfalls coming as a result of its age. Now let's take a look at the driving options that this game has to offer. In the main menu there are 4 main options. There's Special Events, Career, Drive and Championship. Let's look at the Special Events section first. Here there are piles and piles of basically one-off race scenarios. There's everything from hot laps to even drift events, so there's pretty much something for everyone. You can pick and choose which ones you want to do, so you don't have to go unlocking them like in career mode. For each event there are bronze, gold and silver targets, which will be awarded based on your lap times, race results, drift points or whatever the event's based on. I've done a few of these and they can be fun, but I'm not going to go grinding them all out anytime soon. One thing you should know though is that some of these events are only playable if you do have additional DLC, something I'll be talking about a lot in this video. For reference, I have the base game, so all events you see here without the little DLC icon come as standard. So now let's look at the career mode, something quite heavily criticised by a lot of other reviewers. I don't really have much to say about it because it is very basic. There's a series of events that you unlock as you complete races and hot laps. The only real sense of progression is through being allowed to drive faster cars, which does really work as it is incredibly nice when you finally get away from the above 500 races. You earn medals in the same bronze, silver, gold format as the special events, but that's about it. I've completed more of these events since these clips were recorded, and I did find that this mode got quite a bit more enjoyable with the faster cars. For some people this mode will be great, but others may never touch it as it's highly subjective. There's also a championship mode, which is, well, just a championship, although most of this game's content is within the drive submenu, so let's take a look at that. First up, there's practice mode, which does what it says on the tin, just a free session best for, well, practice. Hot lap is exactly the same as practice, except for the fact that you start a few corners before the start line instead of starting in the pit lane. I'm still questioning quite why two separate modes was really necessary here. Time attack is a mode basically as an attempt to spice up hot laps and make something original. There are checkpoints around the track which you have to get to before time runs out. When you get to the next checkpoint, you're given more time to get to the next one, and you also get points depending on how quickly you get to each checkpoint. There's then a quick race option, which is basically just a custom race which you can jump into without worrying about qualifying or practice. There's all the usual options here: opponent difficulty, aggression, number of opponents, and you can choose your starting position, which is quite nice. There's a good level of customization, and these races are quite good to use as practice. Next is the race weekend mode. This is pretty much what you'd expect. It's basically a quick race, but with a practice and qualifying session beforehand. These two sessions can be up to 45 minutes long each, but otherwise all the customization options are the same as the quick race. There's also an online mode. This is the only multiplayer part of the game, and it's quite hit and miss to say the least. Most of the servers have few people in them, but if you can find a lobby without a 70 million minute practice session, you can get some good races in. Unless you get shunted off at the first corner, which happened in my first ever online race. Your mileage will probably vary though. I'm on PS4 servers, but I can't imagine it's much different on the Xbox side of things. If you're on PC, you'll likely have a much better experience though. Due mainly to the modding, Assetto Corsa is a much more popular game on PC, so the online servers are more active. You can also create your own lobby, which you can make private if you just want to play with friends. Finally, there's a drift mode. You can choose any track and any car, although personally I enjoyed using the dedicated drift track made available in this mode. There's also dedicated drift cars, which was really nice to see. The drifting experience in this game is incredibly good. Handling and weight transfers feel accurate and consistent, which allows for drifting that's easy to get the hang of but hard to perfect. I'm not particularly good at it, although it is just so much fun. The drifting system works on a points basis, where you get points to move on to the next level while being under time pressure. You can however just take a drift car out on a practice session or join an online lobby to drift with some other players. So overall then, this game is not perfect. The graphics haven't aged well and way too much of the content is DLC only. This isn't a deal breaker though, as the game's physics still make for an incredibly realistic experience. This game is good for transitioning to sim, but also a must for those already enjoying simulator games. For 6 years old, I think it has fared pretty well overall, and while the console multiplayer is struggling a bit, for the price I think it's a no-brainer for anyone into racing games. There's currently a deal on the PlayStation Store where you can get this game for £6.24 if you've got PS Plus in the UK, and the deal is $8.99 if you're in the US. You can get all the DLC with the Ultimate Edition, although this is quite a bit more expensive. I'll have some links to the best prices in the description. That's all for this video. If you have found it useful, then a like or a sub would be absolutely amazing. If you do have any questions at all about this game, then drop them in the comments and I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. Anyway, that's all, so thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.